Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Live with Big Footy Crowcast. Obviously, Tuesday nights are brought to you by BigFooty.com, and we have with us, hosting us tonight, is Peter J. How you going, Peter?
Phoenix, very well, thank you. Thanks very much for that little intro, and good evening, everybody. Good to have everybody with you, with us, I should say, on Tuesday Night Live. It's good to have everybody listening live and joining in the chat. There's always an opportunity to get in there and have a bit of a chat as well, so please access that, and we'll try and keep you entertained with a little bit of chat over the next 45 minutes or so with Phoenix, of course, and Nikki. How are you, Nikki?
Not too bad.
That's
What's
a lie.
Everybody? Oh, yes, that is a bit of a lie. What's really happening there, Nikki? What happened?
I played football on the weekend and I might have a very mild case of concussion.
How did it happen, Nikki? Talk us through it.
Good old hip and shoulder.
You're
Took the hit.
You're not supposed to hip and shoulder the ump.
I didn't. It was a girl who hip and shouldered me. Braced myself. Absorbed the hit, but then my body decided, no, I think we need to fall down now. So it did.
Who do you play for, Nikki?
I play for Flinders Uni.
And how many other teams have you got in that competition? I'm just interested because, it just leads us into a little bit of a topic, I guess. We've talked about, or we've seen a bit of chatter around about the women's football, and it probably gives us, I'm not sure if we've covered it a lot, but just gives us an opportunity to have a little chat about where women's football is just at the moment, and perhaps being a player, how you see it developing, and whether you think that the National League can take off.
I think it can. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 10 teams in our division. So we're in Div 2 because we're a new team. So if you're a new team, you automatically have to come and play in Div 2. There's some good talent amongst there. There's some teams that are getting smashed.
What sort of talent we're talking about?
Both.
Is it worthwhile coming out and having a look?
Oh, definitely yes. It's interesting because on our team we've got, I think including me, there's only about 4 of us who've actually played the game before. And hang on, I'll just check the ladder. We were sitting 3rd, but we had a loss on the weekend, so we've dropped back down to 4th. But there's about 5 teams that are competing for the top 4 spots, which is quite good, and the fact that we're one of them is quite nice. And I think there's 10 teams as well in Div 1.
Now, Vardy Magic asked if it's 18, is it normal 18 a side, or is it 15 a side, or 16 a side?
Nope, 18. And full rules exactly the same. We've had some interesting umpiring. I think they've kind of given a bit more leeway sometimes in games, and as players, we don't want that. We want the umpires to actually umpire correctly. I mean, if it's there, pay it, because that's the only way we're going to learn. But yeah, there's been an influx, and the thing is that the amateur leagues have brought in a rule that if you want girls' teams, you have to have a women's team. So we played Gaza the other week, and most of that team is actually made up of the mothers whose daughters play in the girls' team. And so they've come out to do it just so that their girls can keep playing footy.
Gee, that's a big hell of a sacrifice for the mums to have to make it when they already do everything anyway. Do you think that Nikki, is the talent pool there, as you said, is the talent pool there to support the National League?
I think we've done the smart thing in aligning with the Northern Territory for me, because South Australia actually used to be pretty decent at it, but I think a lot of the top girls kind of moved to Victoria because you had better opportunities there. And once they actually started to play those exhibition games and things like that, that's going to attract the better players to move to where they've got a chance to actually be seen a bit more. So I think that the Women's League is probably, there's a good chance it's going to happen. I know some people have gotten quite upset about it because they're like, oh my God, there's all these resources that have been taken away from the boys and they're going towards the girls. But you've got to grow the game. And I think the AFL is actually for once kind of doing the right thing, is you've got to go for that higher level to get the attention and to get the media, etc., all on side. And we saw from that the women's game last year actually outrated any of the other games played in the AFL that afternoon. So there is an audience there. I know it was a one-off thing, but there's something there that they can build upon.
I know that from my perspective, having a bit of a background in junior coaching, there's a lot of girls that do play at the primary school level that obviously get lost, after about year 7 or 8, or even probably earlier, year 5 and 6, really. So I think with women's football, it's going to be a slow burn. They need to develop those pathways and formalise them a little bit more. But there's certainly, at primary school level, there's certainly interest from girls to an extent that suggests that there is a future there of some description.
And Waynesville wanted to know what position I played. I'm not a ruckman. I'm not tall enough, but yes, I do play fullback. I'm the one in control of the backlines who yell at everybody else and tells them closer to their man. Although and that's what I do on the field. It's like, man up. And they're like, shouldn't we be calling woman up? Nah, stuff it. Man up. It's kind of funny that the boys who coach us, they're trying to be mindful of using the right terminology, and they're like, oh, we can't call you guys. And we're like, why not? That's what we call ourselves. We're perfectly fine with that. You can do it. So I have to say thank you.
Shouldn't it be person up? Or
nah,
equal,
we still say man up.
Gender equality up or something?
Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting development next year, and to see how it goes. And I see that it appears as though Adelaide is going to get the South Australian licence. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how it goes next year for sure. Probably just, I guess, moving back to the AFL topics. Anything that caught your interest over the weekend?
Well, I did put a thread up on the board because we have discussed this, I know, in our little off the record chats that we kind of have in our secret squirrel place, that we thought we'd bring back the Numbnut of the Week award that we kind of did every so often last year. So I put in some options, and then I got requested to change it to not from Numbnut of the Week to Cockwomble. So definitely a Cockwomble. So it's now actually the Cockwombling Numbnut of the Week award. So There were actually quite a few options, and I put it down to 5. I put it to a vote. We actually didn't get that many votes in, but so the options were Brendan Gale as CEO of Richmond for his stupid comments about how the coaching is not the issue, it's the fact that the players aren't listening. Hello, Brendan. That's called the coaching is an issue.
Cockwomble.
Yep.
I'm going to have to come up with a sound for Cockwomble.
What's something, remember the Wombles? Something to do with them. Brendan Gale then got a second nomination, but this time for his referencing the list management decision of that they went for the mature players because the fans wouldn't accept a rebuild.
Cockwomble.
Definite Cockwomble.
And because he then got 2, so I then decided, was it just Richmond for being Richmond?
Definite Cockwomble. Group Cockwomble.
The AFL umpire for the Stretchergate incident.
Just a dickhead.
In the Sydney-Brisbane game. And then Tom Lynch for giving a perfect example for Dunstall to rant about on the weekend.
And I'm sorry, but for as bad as Richmond are and as ridiculous as some of Brendan Gale's comments are, Chief gets my Cockwomble of the Week award.
Yeah,
and we're gonna actually tweet that to him as well, because what the hell? He just about kicked it into the bloody prosciutto stand from 2 metres out.
Off the side of the boot.
Oh
as soon as he dropped it, it was off the side of the boot, and because I had the perfect view of it, and it's just like, oh, this is gonna miss.
As soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, dribble foul, here we go.
Well, dribble foul. So even though it only got 1 vote, and we actually had 2 votes for the Richmond bingo, so Richmond, and 3 votes for the Brendan Gale list management decision. I think I agree. I think Tom Lynch for just that little bit of stupidity, because he's normally not that stupid, whereas Richmond are Richmond. And we could almost nominate them every week for something they're going to do.
Yeah, Lynchy, well done. We're going to have to come up with some sort of trophy.
A little award?
Yeah, God knows what that's going to look like.
No, there is actually, I think somebody put it, I've seen, if you Google Urban Dictionary cockwomble, somebody's actually put a womble on the top of a rooster. There's an image of it. So there we go. You've got it, Phoenix. We've got an image we can use.
We're just going to have to, bring it to life somehow. I don't know how that's going to happen, but we've got all season to work on it. So Lynch is our inaugural Cockwombler of the Week award.
For this year. So people either in that thread I've got there, or I'll start a new one each week. People need to think of some idiots. The honourable mention to, of course, the head of the A-League who complained about the kick and catch that happened. And we definitely
wasn't he the chairman?
Or was it
Adelaide United? Adelaide United.
Oh, Adelaide United.
Well, that's actually Greg Griffin, who used to be quite a footy bloke. He used to manage half of, a lot of the AFL players back in the day.
He did, and Rob Gerard was in the after party as well. He was celebrating with the Adelaide United boys. So, but also well done to Adelaide United on an amazing final, and coming from last to their.
I absolutely agree with you, Nikki. They should be congratulated, but I have to say that I do think that in addition to the nominations that you mentioned, I think that there was a little bit of public cockwombling going on by one of the great commentators in Simon Hill, and I don't know if you caught the telecast. Now, I love his work. I think he's just one of the best things that have happened to this country in terms of sports calling.
He is good,
absolute genius, and I love him to bits. And could listen to him for hours. But did you notice in the pre-game how he kept talking up Adelaide Oval as a cricket ground?
Yes.
and he refused to make any reference to the fact that any other sport is played at that ground other than cricket. And he led, if you didn't know, he led the viewers to believe that it was a very, very sedate arena that would only hosted the dulcet tones of bat on ball, and that but for the first time it was going to now have a thunderous crowd because it's got a football crowd that'll make a noise that hasn't been seen since the Rolling Stones played a concert.
Sorry.
Mm.
So he just talked all the way around AFL football and was very, very careful to make sure that there was not even a hint that that game was played at that oval. I thought there was some genuine cockwombling that went on from Simon Hill.
That's a fair call.
I think that's a very honourable mention. Very honourable mention there.
Not only that, but I think, and all credit to Adelaide United, it's nice to see an Adelaide team actually get up and win a final. But, how many nationalities were represented in that team, and how many were actually,
The first goal scorer was an Adelaide boy.
Yeah, but he's not an Adelaide boy born and bred, though, is he?
Kamal, I think he was actually born here.
Are you sure about that? I don't know about that.
I have to check. Bruce Jete, I think it's hilarious that we've got Bruce Jete and Bruce Kamal. that kind of, there's some really awkward names there from the 70s. I think he was possibly born here.
Bruce Jete? No, he wasn't.
Not Jete, but Kamal I think might have been.
Okay. I thought he was an Indian singer until recently, but...
No, he's a pretty nice winger.
I mean, considering that where they came, they didn't win for the first 2 months, and for them to basically go, 21 or 22 games without a loss after that, or with one loss, and get up over the Wanderers in the final. All credit to them. It was good to see an Adelaide team put one over the Eastern Seaboard.
The really interesting thing that was mentioned was talking about Guillermo Amor and how he's brought the Barcelona to total football, which people think of as quite attacking. but Barcelona do that from the base of total team defense. And don't we have a coach in our team who talks about total football and working from the base of the team defense? So, there we go. Vardy Max, he said he was actually born in Kenya.
Yeah,
but I think he moved here when he was very young. I think he was only about 2 or 3. So he's growing up, essentially, here. So I don't think he actually remembers. There we go. Moved here age 4. Yeah, that's fair enough. So we're claiming him.
He should actually ring in and give us a soccer report.
Yeah,
because he seems to know more about it than any of us.
But I think there's a nice parallel with Amor and Pike, and that mention of the total football really caught my eye or my ear in a way because of what Pike had been talking about in pre-season about that whole concept that he has of total football.
Yeah, but the thing is, total football is a phrase coined by the Dutch teams. The Dutch teams, their style of soccer, if we want to start talking about bloody soccer, it's their concept. Total football is their concept. So I think I agree that Pikey certainly talked about, but I think it's a phrase that's coined fairly regularly now. But certainly the Dutch were the originators of what they would call total football in the round ball game.
There's never an original idea. It's always from somebody else.
We got Spackler on chat tonight.
Oh my God!
Bloody hell, he's a turn up.
He's buying into the Tony Popovic line of long balls being used by Adelaide Oval, and makes the fair point of why would Greg Griffin have cared about the state of the pitch if we're just going to be bombing long balls all afternoon. But I think it was a bit pedantic from Greg, and they're a little bit fussy about the state of the pitch, and I noticed that Simon Hill referred to it a couple of times in the call as well, and that it was sort of bobbling a little bit. And at the end of the day, and I've heard Simon Hill complain about the state of pitches and things like that. And, the reality is that if you've got a big enough game and you can draw enough money, then you can build your own stadiums and have your own pitches. But as it is, as wonderful as that was on Sunday, and all credit to everybody, the reality is that next year, round 1, when Adelaide are Central Coast or Newcastle or Wellington, there'll be 5,000 at Hindmarsh.
That's a bit unfair.
No, normally they get about 12.
Yeah, they do get double figures.
They do decently at Hindmarsh.
I reckon, probably 5 is a bit harsh, but they wouldn't often get 12. Against some of the bigger clubs, some of the more rubbish clubs, they would get 7,000 or 8,000 at times. But even,
depends
let's
on
say
the
they get 12. Let's give it 12. Even so, let's say they get 12,000. They're still not even packing out Hindmarsh, so they can't expect that they're going to, have 50,000, people stadiums that are going to be, catering to soccer. It's not going to happen.
It's an interesting conversation though, because you could make a fair argument that the redevelopment of Adelaide Oval has led to bigger average crowds for particularly Port. So it makes you wonder whether if they did improve the facilities, whether they redeveloped Hindmarsh and increased the capacity, or whether they built another stadium. Not that that's going to happen. Whether those crowds would actually lift. I mean, it's a bit of a concrete jungle at Hindmarsh. So I don't know, Pete. Soccer's definitely building in this country, and there weren't a lot of passengers in that 50,000 crowd on the weekend. Most of them were pretty passionate and vocal.
And what gets me, though, to actually turn this back into AFL...
For Wayne's World benefit?
Well, no, I was actually thinking this before he posted that, and I was going to mention this, was the crowd at GWS. They were talking about 14,000 that were there against Hawthorn, and what a great crowd that was for GWS. And I'm thinking, I'm sorry, that's 14,000 people. That's not a great crowd.
Yeah, look, I don't know.
And they've been playing well. If they're playing well and they can only get 14,000, that's not sustainable.
Yeah, but again,
not in the long run.
You got to play the long game with GWS. I mean, the GWS are playing really well, and yet the people that live in that vicinity wouldn't even understand that. So you know what Sydney and New South Wales people are like. until GWS actually win something, nobody will give a shit.
Yeah, I
which
tend
is
to
a pity.
agree with Phoenix. I think that you've got to look at it in perspective and the fact that, what they're trying to achieve there and where they've come from in terms of the crowds that they would normally attract out there. And, it's very, very difficult for football to get a hold out there because it's a massive rugby and soccer heartland. And I think, I tend to agree that 14,000, is a good crowd. And those people will only just be starting to realise that they do have a good team and that there is a product to sell. So I think that overall, I wouldn't have been, if you're the AFL, you're not too disappointed with the 14,000 there. But the main thing is that it's a nice spectacle, it looks good on TV, and they start getting some viewers.
Yeah. And we can't underestimate what they've actually achieved. I mean, yes, they've been handed, 5 years of first-round draft picks, but they absolutely hammered last year's premiers. No one else has been able to do that this year.
They got their recruiting right.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And
much more than Gold Coast.
There was a graphic put up on one of the footy shows last night, showing not only what they've got, but what they've got out, and also what they've got lined up for next year. There's going to be some quality players on the market from GWS next year, just simply because they can't fit them all in. So they're going to be a powerhouse over the next 5 years. And I think, was it Matty Randell that predicted that they'd be the monsters awoken or whatever it is? Well, he was dead set right.
Yeah, I think what they did of going for the quality experienced players, but then the young ones they recruited around them, I think they kind of knew that they were going to get poached, so they got a whole lot of the top quality forwards, so that if you took one or two, they still had that depth to use, which we've seen come through. I mean, like Lob on the weekend with those contested marks, they were fabulous.
Yeah, and, not that recruiting is a throw mud at the wall and see what sticks scenario, but in their case, they've basically been able to take a whole bunch of first and second round picks and throw them at the wall, and they can cherry pick from that group and still be left with some very marketable commodities at trade table. And I think bringing in Stevie J has proven to be a bit of a masterstroke. He gives them X factor up forward, and I think, despite his, shall we say, selfish style of football at times, he does know he has a lot of IP to bring with him. And you can see a far more organised setup at GWS this year up forward. They're very potent. They're going to be hard to beat anywhere, I think.
Yeah, I think it's only 3 or so weeks, maybe 4 weeks before we play them. So they're certainly going to be a great challenge for us to get over. And it'll be a very, very interesting game on 28th of May, 7:10 p.m. Saturday night. Just as we talk about our main subject matter of the podcast, the Adelaide Crows, what did we think of the game on Saturday afternoon? I attended, and it was a pretty, as we all know, pretty ugly and scrappy affair. I thought that Freo, they really, really defended very, very deeply. And quite often, when we've been watching football this year and we've seen some zones set across the sort of not as deep, and so that when they do get out, we see a lot of goals out the back. And what they were doing is that they were just defending so deep that when I noticed on a number of occasions when they actually got themselves out, that there was nobody at all to assist in any kind of transition. So they were holding the ball up at around around sort of centre wing, centre area. And not getting those easy transition goals. So they just didn't appear as though they were trying to sort of chase the game at all. And of course, we just got clogged up and jammed with space. And so in the end, it was a pretty ugly, pretty scrappy affair. But in the end, I thought, at the start of the year, if you'd said, look, we'll beat Freo by 33 points at home in round 6, then, you'd take that every day of the week, surely.
Yeah.
Well, I said less than a 10-goal win, I wasn't going to be happy. So I'm not happy. Because we were 10 goals up and then we just put the cue on the rack again. We did look really tired, and it was very interesting then watching Hawthorn play the GWS game and how tired they looked as well. And I'm thinking, that game we played against Hawthorn, did that take a little something out of each of us, or was it treated as such a final between both sides that there was the letdown?
Well, certainly our tackle count was down on the weekend. Our uncontested possessions were up. I don't think you could accuse us of playing bruise-free footy, but I think there might have been some niggles and some soreness carried into the game. It looked like, I think Scorpus and I were talking on Sunday night, that we looked like we were just doing enough to win. I was with you, Nick. I wanted a 10-goal win, and it pissed me off that we let them have the last 20-odd points of the game. You've got to wonder, if Ross Lyon has given the season away, which they clearly must have now at 6-zip, does he continue to persist with that defensive game style, or does he now start to implement what I'm sure his Hawthorn assistants are trying to help him implement, which is a more attacking, free-flowing game that's the current standard? Because if they go through the whole year playing that style of football, they'll achieve nothing.
Well, they were actually kind of attacking, but it was just incredibly poor kicking for goal because the wind there was absolutely atrocious. And it was kind of hilarious to me at the last quarter that players finally started compensating for the wind, and the wind had died. And so they were then miss-kicking again. And that was holding us up because we were kicking with the wind, and our kicks forward were going over the heads of our forwards just every single time. And, of course, Freo were mopping that up. So I think that didn't help it, particularly in that first quarter, was our delivery, because we weren't smart. We didn't figure out that the wind was such a factor.
We didn't adapt to the conditions. They didn't either.
No.
The thing of it is, though, you can't say that Freo attacked at any point. They were kicking with the wind and had two behind the ball. That's not attacking football, not in anyone's language.
No, they didn't do that all the time. They were just trying to lose that game. Not trying to lose the game, but they were trying not to get beaten by a big score. That was how I read it. And look, I've seen teams in rebuild that have been like that. I mean, Melbourne, classic for that. Where they're in rebuild and they're just trying to. I don't know whether it's just they're trying to not look too publicly bad in front of their supporters or what it is, but there just seems to be no real effort to win the game, because it's almost like there's a realisation if we open the game up, if we create space, for us to attack, then we're just going to get absolutely pulverised the other way. And so it's almost like, well, let's just try and, stem the flow, make it not look too bad. And then, at the end of the year, we'll go to the draft and we'll go to the trade table and try and rebuild.
So there's a couple of questions. There's been a bit of talk about Matty Crouch. Pete, what do you think of his game?
Look, I didn't think it was, I put it this way, I don't think it was his best for the season. I think he's played better. But being a Crouch, he still seems to rack up numbers fairly easily. And I made the comment through the week, I wondered if those two guys just grew up in a really, really small backyard. Because at one stage in the Sandhill game, I think Brad had 5 kicks and 15 handballs. And Matt had some other ridiculous stat as well. I think that, look, we both love the Crouch, but we love both the Crouch brothers. They bring a lot, and I don't think anyone would argue that they're not first 22 or anything like that. I think they're terrific. I particularly like Matt Crouch. I think he's got so much potential, and he does such a good job for us already. When you think how young he is, but the only rider I put on these guys is that they just seem obsessed with over handballing, and when you're putting up numbers like 5 kicks and 15, 20 handballs, I really just don't think you're heading teams, and you need to be getting some meterage and some constructive play. And I mean, there's obviously when they're playing close in the clinches, there's obviously going to be times where handball is the obvious option, but they just don't seem to have a capacity to get out and create play by kicking the ball. I don't think any coach would like that kind of imbalance, to be honest.
Well, if you have a look at Crouch's heat map, sorry, Nick, if you have a look at Crouch's heat map from the weekend, most players have a spread, a red zone spread, across a region of the ground, across half back or up forward if they're a forward line player or whatever. Matt Crouch's heat map, red zone, and I'm not kidding you, was the centre circle. The centre circle. So, and yes, he did get possessions outside of that, obviously, but most of his work was done basically within the centre circle. Now, that's not good enough for an inside mid when there's lots of stoppages around the ground as there was against Fremantle on the weekend. He needs to get himself involved more in general play, as far as I'm concerned, and also a little bit more in the round the ground stoppages as well.
The thing that worries me is that, we haven't had a lot of, we've had maybe 2 games where both the brothers have actually been in the side. And I don't think anybody wants to see a situation where the pair of them combine, for 10 kicks and 30 handballs.
Yeah, that's right.
I was very disappointed with Crouch in the SNFL. He, even more so than Matt, he had that worst handball to kick ratio. And I didn't actually notice him too much. And then I looked at the stats and going, holy crap, he's had it how much?
Yeah, 36
he was doing
touches.
He was doing those quick little handballs out. He did something I wasn't happy with either as well. He faked for a high free. And it's like, sorry, Brad, you're better than that. You shouldn't be doing that. And that was in the first quarter. I think he might have got a bit of a talking to because that didn't happen for the rest of the game. But it was like, yeah, I know they're going after you, but you don't do that. Matt was interesting because he did try and get some kicks, but they were awful, which was really unusual because he has actually been a lot better. So I wonder whether there was a little something going on there or not, whether an injury, a niggle or something.
High ball drop in the wind, Nick. That's what that is.
Is that what he was doing it?
Well, that's what I reckon. Because he does. He drops it from Tex Walker high. And he doesn't guide it down anywhere near as well as Tex does. And I think that found him out. But he's actually got to become a multi-dimensional player. At the moment, he's a very one-dimensional player. He's fantastic in and under. But we've got Jared Lyons at half the price that'll do that for us. We need Matt to show a little bit more class and be a bit more damaging in the vein of a Sam Mitchell. Matt Crouch has got the capacity and the talent to be Sam Mitchell for us, but he's got to get on his bike more.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I agree, Phoenix.
For me, the most disappointing thing in that first half was that our running player was Thompson. Yeah. Pretty much. He was the only one who was really running, and Sloaney worked his way in. Yeah. He wasn't as influential in the first half as what Thompson was. Sloan then built into it even more and was awesome by the end of the game. But that first half Thompson was the one doing the running. You didn't see Seedsman, you didn't see Atkins. But I think for them, they need that midfield to be getting the ball out to them. So whilst others might have a go at Seed Atkins for being quiet in that first thing, we need to have a go at the midfield for not getting it to them. And once we actually started to get on top a bit more on the midfield, then you saw Seeds Atkins actually get more into the play.
Yeah, I thought Ray had a nice game. He is just working and building into some nice form. A couple of howlers early on, but I thought that mentally, obviously, he recovered well from that. He just kept searching for his targets, kept trying to use the ball. Didn't get off put by the fact that he made a couple of errors early on, which was pleasing to see, and just continues to, I think, feel more at home at that level, and he continues to sort of work at taking his time and making good decisions and trying to do something useful with the ball every time he gets it. So I think he's developing nicely.
Yeah, he is. It was that in the last quarter where he did that defensive tackle, he should have committed to that earlier. He tends to, when the ball gets turned over to the opposition, he tends to kind of jog and not commit as quickly as what I would like to see. But for me, that's more a learning thing. And once he actually realised that he could impact, then he put the afterburners on, got in and actually made the tackle, which was really great to see. But there was that first initial little instant of him just jogging, going, oh, this isn't my problem. Oh, hang on, no, I can help. And as you've said before, Peter, it's a learning experience for him. And it's good to actually see that he did make that change that he needed to.
I'd like to see Sorry, go on, Pete.
Sorry, mate. I was just quickly going to say, you're right. I mean, what's that now? 14 games, and so we just need to keep pumping games into him, to get him to 50 games.
What I'd like to see from Rat over time is that he develops his leg into more of a weapon. He's the king of the hit-up 20-metre pass at the moment, which is great because apart from a couple of hiccups in the wind last week, he nails pretty much every one of them. It'd be great if he could do that over 40 metres, gain a little bit more.
And he is capable of that.
Yes,
He's
absolutely.
absolutely capable of that. And so,
Interesting.
You're right.
Wig in the SANFL, we know he's got that beautiful long leg. He hasn't used that in the SANFL yet. They've all been the shorter passes, which for him are about the 30, 40 metres, because we know he can kick it further than that. But I kind of find it interesting that there's, I think, a bit of a parallel with Wig and Atkins going on there. The other thing the person I would like to single out, even though, yes, he did get cited and got a $1,000 fine, but I thought Hartigan, again, took another step forward in his development. And if we'd lost him I was actually quite worried that we might lose him for a game, because I think his importance to our structure, but his importance also for attacking rebound has been very significant this season.
I absolutely agree with you, Nikki. He was absolutely terrific. I thought on Saturday he was just really, really good in the one-on-one contests, just his judgment on the the flight of the ball coming in as well. He judges the ball beautifully, so he does all those really, really good things that you want. Your defensive measures that you want your defenders to do, and as you say, with some confidence and experience, starts to run off as well. And he's another one that you just need to get. As Phil Walsh said last year, you've got to get these guys to 50 games. There's some growing pains, of course, and you've just got to, if you see the talent, you've got to suck up the fact that you're going to get some crappy performances here and there, but he's now developing really, really nicely.
And hilariously, he turned up in his nice shiny Toyota truck down at the SANFL, parked his car, so it was nice and close to the goals, and there was him, Lever, Brown, and they were eventually joined as well by Charlie Cameron, cheering on the boys, and they were quite loud about it, particularly any time Alex Keith got near the ball. There would be them shouting out Keithy and Keith man, and it was just we were sitting a bit further away, but you could just hear them. And to me, that was actually kind of nice that they were there to support their teammates in the lower level.
Yeah. Vardy Magic on chat raises two good points in one statement. First of all, I'd be interested in your thoughts on Cheney, Pete, because the board's found a new whipping boy, haven't they?
Yeah, look, I just want to be really, really clear on my thoughts on Kyle Cheney. I don't have, and I think I've said this, I don't have any particular man love for him in the way that I always had for the Rat, for example. But I just think that it's just ridiculous that each and every week you get on the board and there's always, it's the first thing everybody mentions. Cheney's responsible for 5 goals. Cheney's responsible for 6 goals. And it just seems to have been the most mindless beat up of criticism of a player. Over the years, I always thought that, VB and McKay, they were our classic whipping balls, but I thought that they really, most of the time those guys really deserved it. But I've just seen, nothing. And I think that the one where I really, really took this on, I think, and took it by the scruff of the neck and got my teeth into it, was I decided to sit down and I watched very, very carefully. I replayed a whole game, which was the NAB 3 game against the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And I actually recorded that, and I thought, right, I'm going to sit down and watch this, and all I'm going to do is sit down. I'm going to write comments every time this guy goes near the ball, and there was just no correlation between what was being said and what actually happened. And the other thing is, where all credibility on this guy was lost was after the Richmond game, and the same old stuff's trotted up, and he's in the coaches' votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous that when you've got a team that's playing, we're playing team defence, we're playing a zone defence, and you can't be blaming one defender when you're playing a zone defence. And you've got one guy who, in particular him, he's obviously under instruction to be coming off his man and chopping out Talia and Hardigan on key forwards. And so, if that's what he's doing, and he must be under instruction to do that for the amount of times you see him do it, and he does it successfully, you can't then, be blaming one person because who's covering for him?
Well, exactly right. And I'm 100,000% with you, Pete. I think Chaney has done particularly well. Yes, he makes mistakes. They all make mistakes.
Everybody does.
He's not getting the goals kicked on him that a lot of people are sprouting just because they see him next to a player that kicks a goal. They think that he's been on him all game. Chaney's value is in that third man up in the marking contests when you've got Hardigan and Talia manned up against their opponents. The amount, if I had $1 for every time Chaney's come in over the top, and Lever for that matter, but both of them, they're obviously charged with that responsibility to kill the contest as much as possible. It's a definite strategy that we're using this year, rather than going one out, and it's working. And one of the reasons it's working is because Chaney is being very effective at that role. Can't knock him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate.
And for me, it's the experience, the age of him that is actually key to our very young defence. Yes, he doesn't have a huge amount of games in terms of the AFL, but he's got that experience, and I think he's actually got that calming sort of influence that helps our youngsters, and they see him come up and they see him do those intercepts. It gives them, I think, a bit of confidence.
He's not a sexy player. Simple as that.
No.
He's workmanlike. He's a good, average, solid, workmanlike player, and every team needs them. And I think the one thing that our defence lacks is some one dynamic player. I think we're a little one pace down back, and whether Chaney eventually gives way to a player that gives us a little bit more spark and a little bit more agility and pace deep in our defence, I'm not sure, but he doesn't deserve to get dropped on form.
No, and it may be that he's just keeping us, a spot there for Dode or whoever, and as I said, I've got no particular man love for him in the sense that I'm sure that eventually we can get players that may play that role better, but at the moment, he's very, very serviceable in the role. He doesn't make the mistakes that people allege that he makes, and I think it's a very, very interesting study in human behaviour, because what happens is that people see what they want to see, and so when one of the lovies, as I call them, when one of the BF lovies make a mistake, well, we just look past it and we just keep watching the game. But oh my goodness, if Kyle Chaney, if he makes a mistake, well, that's just cause for a meltdown, and that's the only part of his game that's focused on. It's really quite a bizarre group thing. I'm sure that there's a PhD in there for someone somewhere, yeah. in Kyle Chaney, I think. But anyway,
the other side of
Jake Kelly has fractured his hand at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Well, we've Rory led out for 2 to 3 as well now too, so
yeah.
That's a really interesting situation. I vote Miller down in the back half.
Well, actually, that's a good segue because I think that having a look at the changes through this week, I think that 38 pages by Tuesday night is just not enough. We need to talk a little bit more about our ins and outs.
I've avoided that thread.
I had a look around. That the closest any other team has in their changes is 15 pages. That's Hawthorn. They had 15 pages. We've got 38.
And so that's after a win. They lost.
And that's after a win. So I think 22 out of the 38 is devoted to trying to find ways to reshuffle the team to get Cheney out of it. I mean, some of the Well, we've got McGovern going back, we've got Miller going back, all just so that we can get Cheney on the side. It's just the most absurd commentary I've ever seen. But anyway, we know that Rory Laird's missing this week. That's going to be a huge loss. I still think that if it's a 1 week injury, I think that there's probably more chance that the coaching staff will just try and shuffle the side and cover it. But when it's a 3 week injury, I'm not sure that they are so keen to shuffle the side for 3 weeks. I think that you're looking more at a direct replacement. And for me, as much as it's distasteful and none of us like it, I think that it puts VB in the frame.
No.
They might go Henderson. And honestly, after what I saw on the weekend, I would much prefer VB.
I don't want Henderson down there either.
No, Henderson, when South started to get the run on in the last quarter, it was because Henderson decided he didn't want to chase anybody anymore. That was somebody else's problem.
Yeah, but that's him to a T. And,
yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to see him anywhere near the team ever again. Nikki, I've got a question for you. You were there. And I absolutely respect your opinion and your views. What an objective, unbiased view of VB's game on the weekend?
Quite good. He knows how to get himself into the right positions, where to help the rest of his teammates. The problem I have, and my father discussed it at the time, is, we both agree that the AFL's gone past him, but he's brilliant for our team in the SANFL. If we need to pull him into the AFL, he's going to come in, he's going to give 110%, he's going to give everything that he possibly can, but it's not going to be a long-term prospect. So in terms of playing the Bulldogs, I'm kind of interested as to whether they're going to think about the speed of Henderson, or do they want maybe a little bit more security in terms of VB? Because I think VB's been very solid, is how I will describe it. He hasn't been outstanding, but they've played him entirely in the back lines. He has not gone into the midfield once in the SANFL.
Well, you've got to look at the way Western. Well, you've got to look at the way Western Bulldogs played on Friday night.
Yeah,
and I don't. There's been a noticeable deceleration in their transition work. Well, there certainly was against North Melbourne, and I think, given their recent injuries, that's probably a prudent and necessary tweak by Beveridge. But what it does is it makes them a slightly different proposition in terms of matchups. The danger in having VB in next week is that we're going to be too slow. We've got Talia, we've got Hardigan, we've got Traney. All right, Hardigan's
fast.
Yeah, no, you say it every week. But he's still...
People don't understand that he is.
Yeah, no, I get it. But Luke Dowhouse will still out-jig him. He's not... Hardigan will match up on a maybe a Jake Stringer. He'll probably get first crack at him, I'd imagine. But it's their midfield that are going to cause us damage, particularly at Etihad. And I don't think having VB in the side is actually going to be of any benefit whatsoever. I'd be tempted to bring in Riley Knight, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he didn't have the best of games, but he built into it quite well. The left field one I thought was what they might do with Wig, as to whether he's a possibility, but he is quite slight. But we know he can play down back if we need to, even though we have been playing in the midfield. The impression I got from the Bulldogs North game was that as long as you pressure at them at the moment with the way they are, they will fold. They can't get that speed through. And I think North gave us a really good blueprint on how to shut them down.
Well, they just pressed up on them, and you're right, Nick. They do need to have a bit more frontal pressure on them to keep them on the back foot. VB's not going to give us that.
No.
Harry Wigg's not going to give us that. Henderson's not going to give us that. We need whoever we get in there needs to be able to apply defensive pressure, and I think out of all the options, Riley Knight gives us enough flexibility to be able to throw the team around, like Pete said before, because we're almost going to be covering. our defence needs to be centred around their attacking midfielders more so than their forward line, really.
So Scott suggested that Brad Crouch in and then putting Atkins and Seedsman can swing back. Atkins, hell no. Seedsman's a possibility, and he has been doing that a little bit, but I think we would prefer to keep him more on the wing. But also, Etihad, you can actually play that very attacking off halfback. So he's a possibility that we could do. So that could mean that Knight comes in.
I think that Crouch will come in for Lions. Unfortunately, I think that Rue was apparently talking on radio about a couple of unlucky players this week, and I think as much as I think that Jared Lyons has done a good job, and I think he would be desperately unlucky to be dropped, but I have a feeling that he'll make way for Brad Crouch. I think that then there's Miller also to come in. And
I think Miller did better than Crouch did.
Yeah, I would absolutely believe that, because I tell you what, I'd rather 11 kicks, 11 handballs and 3 goals than 5 kicks and 38 handballs. But anyway, that's just me. But I think that obviously Brad Crouch will come in. Miller, I think, will come in as well. Now, it's going to be a situation of, do they bring in I think I started off with this. Do they bring in the replacement for Laird, or do they bring in Miller and put him on a wing and then interrupt that lovely balance that we've had with Seedsman and Atkins? I really, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. In many respects, I really hope they don't interrupt that nice role playing that we've got going on there with Seedsman. And I have a funny feeling. I don't know, and this is just completely a little bit of a segue, but a little bit off the cuff. Does anyone think that they might have sat down with Seedsman and said, and because there was this business about whether he was going to come to Adelaide or not? Do you think someone got in his ear and said, "You know what? We don't want you to play defence, mate. You don't have to worry about playing defence at Adelaide. We see you as a free running wingman, just using you." Do you reckon that might have been why we got him over the line?
He did talk about that our values aligned with his values. He has played a little bit down back when we've needed him to, but I think there was the discussion of that you would mostly be through the midfield. Yes, occasionally we can use the down back. So I think that conversation might have been tinged a little towards that way, but not fully the way you just said it, Pete.
And ironically, Seeds actually worked back quite a bit in the Freo game. He did quite a bit of nice work defensively last weekend.
He's been doing some really good defensive run to assist, because we keep talking about the 7 that go through our back lines. They don't say 6, they say 7.
No doubt that both him and Atkins, as part of their role, go back deep, no question. Yeah. And they've been doing that all season. But it's more of it's not so much. Neither of them so much have a sort of a tight checking role or anything like that. They just move back down and pick up sort of each side of the zone, if that makes sense. But anyway, that's a bit of I digress a little bit there. But in many respects, I really wouldn't want to see that interrupt. And that's what I was saying before about the shuffle. Do we really want to shuffle for 3 weeks and interrupt?
I don't think we will.
No, so I think for me, Miller could possibly come in for Cameron, and that's controversial probably, but Rue said there was going to be 2 very unlucky players. I think that's the most like-for-like replacement, so I think that's a potential as well. And I think that the third change will be the Laird replacement, which I like your idea of Riley Knight, but I think that my gut feel is that they'll go for VB.
Bit of a question mark.
This is going to be very interesting.
Bit of a question mark still over McGovern too. I think of the
he was very poppy at the end.
Yeah, of the 3 scary injuries, Seed I think is all right. Jakey Lever just got a stinger by the looks of it, but I don't think Mitch is quite right. He might have strained a PCL, I reckon.
Well, that could be quite right as well.
He landed very heavily on the hip. That
could quite easily be the out for Miller coming in, which would leave Cameron in if McGovern doesn't come up.
Yeah.
So that's the easy fix there. Yeah.
I mean, Vardy Magic just talked about Cameron's aggression is not to be underestimated. Yes, but he didn't provide the attacking as well as what we know he can do. And Miller is also aggressive. And I think Miller has a little bit more class than Cameron. This is a really nice problem to have. Do you have Cameron in or do you have Miller? And Damp Squid also pointed out quite nicely that Seaman loves the tackle. I've quite enjoyed watching his tackling this year. He's not afraid of going in hard at all, which is very, very pleasing to see.
I should make the point that I'm a huge fan of Charlie Cameron, and I would be very, very happy to see him stay in the team. But what I'm doing is I'm just taking the cue from what Rashido said on the radio, and that is that there was going to be two very unlucky players.
Yeah. Well, and it begs the question, Pete, what the hell input does Roo have? Because he's only a board member.
None.
He shouldn't have any freaking idea what's going on at selection, and that worries me slightly.
I think that's just him talking about what he thinks is going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's not, that's not gospel at all. So,
Roo has been known to set the scene early in the week before for an agenda for the week, and it bothers me a little. As much as I love Roo and what he's done at the club, I just hope he's not micromanaging too much.
I see Damp Squib there coming out in support of Charlie Cameron, and mate, I absolutely agree with you. I really don't want to see him dropped, but I just have that bad feeling that he may be squeezed out for Miller because they obviously I'd suggest want to get him back in the team. All right, we're heading towards the end of the what's been a really, really interesting and enjoyable hour. But so we just want to have a little bit of a look at how we think the result will go. I hate this fixture every year. There's three fixtures that I hate that I never ever want to see in the program, and that's the Bulldogs at Etihad, Geelong at Skilled Stadium, and West Coast over in Perth. Those three games, you can just draw a line through those at the start of the season because you're just not going to win them. And so for me, I just don't see us winning this game. Sorry, I know that's a bit negative, but I just, I can think of how many times I've sat there and analysed those three fixtures thinking that, we've got a chance, and every time we go out there and we get blown out of the water in all three fixtures. And so I can't see it.
I'm probably going to tip Bulldogs, but I think this is one of our best chances we've got for knocking them off at Etihad. With the way they're playing at the moment, their injuries that they've got, and I think we might be just that little bit of a step ahead if we play to our best. Laird is a huge out though. So I'm tipping the Bulldogs, but I'm hoping that I got the tip wrong.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different to you guys. I wasn't overly impressed with the Bulldogs against North Melbourne on Friday night last week. And I understand we're playing on their favourite deck and all the rest of it. But the team had a little bit of a rest after their couple of hard weeks against Sydney and Hawthorn. But I think this next stretch of 3 games will make or break our season. And if the team don't go over to Etihad on Saturday night ready to play, then they don't deserve to be in the top 4 this year. And on paper and on form, we should beat the Western Bulldogs by 5 goals. And I'm holding faith that we're going to turn up. If we turn up, we win 5 goals.
And a nice shout out to Vardy Magic, who has said that Cheney says Talia says we've got them covered.
A bit of gold there from Vardy Magic as we went up this evening.
It's quite just on that. Isn't it incredible that Beveridge and Bontempelli and a couple of others are still crapping on about that? I mean, they've got an axe to grind about this, and I think it's. They talked about rivalry. They touched on rivalry on a couple of the footy shows last night. I think it's a one-way street. I really don't think we give a rat's ass, to be honest.
Yeah, we don't give a shit.
But they certainly
I'm sure we don't. I think that they're just trying to build up something just to get themselves get their teeth sunk into it to give some motivation. I'm sure that's all it is.
No, Beveridge really has an issue about it. And this is why I don't rate Beveridge anymore. Just the way he reacted about it last year, the whinge he had about the fact it wasn't played at Etihad. Sorry, mate. Grand finals played at the MCG, and if your game plan doesn't work at the MCG, you're not going to win a final.
Well, the
that's actually
intimation
going to count.
the intimation was that essentially in the aftermatch, Beveridge has gone, right, put that aside. We've got the game that we've been waiting for all year coming up this week, so you've got to put that one behind us and get yourselves up for this one. Essentially, apparently, is what was said in the post-match coach's address after the North Melbourne loss.
Yeah, well, that's not good. It's a way to fire up his team.
Yeah.
That's
but obviously, but there's got to be fuel to be fire, Pete. So obviously, like that wouldn't have any motivational impact on the players if the players didn't give a shit.
Well, possibly. I think
anyway.
I think he's just trying to get into their heads and fire them up. But you might be right. But anyway, it should be a good game, and we're just about out of time, I think. It's been, as always, brilliant to have Tuesday Night Live. We thank all of the people that messaged in and gave us some stuff to go on with. We really appreciate your input, and we try and take the topics that you raise and have a bit of a chat about them. So it's always good to have that interactive feedback. So I appreciate that. Nikki, thanks very much for your time this evening and all of your expert comments. Hope your concussion feels a little bit better. And Phoenix, thanks as always, for your technical support and getting us up and running. Thanks, mate.
My pleasure, mate. Bye. It's been good chatting.
Everyone, see you next week.